and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the world of sports on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories from the sports world over the last week. Bowlers were on the top in the first day of the fourth Ashes test between England and Australia with 20 wickets on the first day itself. Australia lead by 46 runs at the end of day one at the MCG in Melbourne. Nikola Jokic recorded a 56-point triple-double with 16 rebounds and 15 assists, breaking a record set by Steph Curry as Denver Nuggets beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in 142 for 138 on Christmas Day. Scottish football legend and two-time European Championship winner John Robertson passed away at the age of 72. Robertson won 2 European titles with Nottingham Forest and was widely regarded as the club's best player of all times. Two-time Olympic champion Eliud Kipchoge has announced the Eliud Kipchoge World Tour, aiming to run a marathon on all 7 continents over the next 2.5 years, not to prove greatness but to inspire and give back. Three-time Grand Slam champion Stan Wawrinka says that 2026 will be his final season as a professional, describing it as the final chapter of a trophy-laden career. The former world number 3 was one of the few players to win major singles trophies in the Big Three era of Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. And we begin with the English Premier League, where the race for the title is as tight as it can get. Arsenal are top of the Premier League at Christmas, but the halfway point of the season paints a far more complex title picture, with at least 3 other teams firmly in contention. For Mikel Arteta, festive leadership comes with painful memories. Arsenal led the table at Christmas in both 2022 and 2023, only to be overtaken by the Manchester City. In fact, across the Premier League era, Arsenal have topped the standings at Christmas 4 times and never gone on to win the title. Arteta insists he is not looking backwards, saying his confidence comes from performance levels and consistency rather than league position. Manchester City remains Arsenal's most obvious threat. Pep Guardiola's side sit just 2 points off the top and are building momentum. City have now won multiple league titles after trailing at Christmas, and their current run suggests another familiar surge. Erling Haaland continues to be decisive, leading the scoring charts by a wide margin, and City's experience in pressure moments makes them a constant danger, despite not being at their fluent best. Liverpool are also part of the title conversation at the halfway mark, although their early season momentum slowed after a demanding run of fixtures. They remain within striking distance with a settled squad, attacking depth and a strong record in big matches. Liverpool are seen as capable of reasserting themselves as the season moves into its decisive phase. Aston Villa may be the most intriguing challenger. They sit just 3 points behind Arsenal and arrive at the halfway stage as the league's form team. Villa have put together an impressive winning streak, combining defensive discipline with clinical finishing. While questions remain about whether they can sustain the pace over a full campaign, their position at this stage underlines that they are no longer outsiders. Statistically, being top at Christmas offers no guarantees. In Premier League history, only around half of Christmas leaders have gone on to win the title. With Arsenal, City, Liverpool and Villa all tightly packed at the halfway point, the title race appears wide open, setting up a second half of the season defined by fine margins, consistency and some nerve. Now, I request Pradyumna Tembikar, who's an Indian ambassador at the FIFA World Cup, to join me in this discussion. Thank you, Pradyumna, for joining me here at NewsX World in the world of sports. What do you think? What are the 4 key takeaways from the Premier League season so far?
You correctly mentioned, firstly, thank you so much for having me here, but you correctly mentioned that Arsenal, Man City, Aston Villa and Liverpool are surely in the title fray, but there's one team which is sitting on the 4th place, and that is the Blues from West London. That's Chelsea, Club World Cup champions. They have made their identity back into the European stage with some convincing performances, especially beating Barcelona 3-0. Yes, the December run has not been that consistent, but I think Enzo Maresca's men might just spring in a surprise. Mind you, one of the main takeaways, yes, Arsenal sitting on top of the table and Man City chasing on with only a 2-point deficit. But if you closely see, it is a very close-knit table compared to 2025 because where Chelsea is sitting right now, that's fourth place. Chelsea sits at 29 points. And the difference between Chelsea, who's fourth, compared to somebody like a Bournemouth who's sitting at 15, the difference is only, let's say, from 29 to 22, it's just 7 points. So it just goes to show the kind of competition the league is trying to build year on year. Just hoping for yet another exciting grandstand finish. Let's see how Aston Villa goes far. Unai Emery has done an impressive job by beating Arsenal as well. So let's see how the photo finish occurs by the end of May.
Okay, so with Unai Emery's side winning 10 consecutive games, on the bounce, could they mount a sustained challenge for the title in the second half?
They might just do it because Leicester City back in the 2015-16 season also had a similar run, but they were comparatively on the top two sides. If you see, yes, there is a significant cushion, a 7-point cushion between Chelsea and Aston Villa. So they might just be a bit relaxed and they have nothing to lose when it comes to fighting for the top two positions. And let's be honest, they are probably the best underdog team in the top 6 currently. With that said and done, Liverpool, yes, bringing up a challenge, only hoping that Aston Villa does not go into that downward slump, which usually happens for people and teams after the international break in March. So if they handle the April slump properly, I guess Aston Villa might just compete or do a late surge to a title. It doesn't look likely at this point of time, but you may never know. It's football.
Sure, and talking of Erling Haaland, he's once again proved that he is superhuman in his goal-scoring skills. But the question is, does City rely on Haaland just a little too much?
Honestly speaking, Guardiola for the first time is looking as if he's experimenting around his squad and trying to find a solution beyond Erling Haaland. Somewhere in the past, he tried to replace Aguero with strikers when Aguero was nearing towards his exit from Man City, but doesn't look the case with Haaland at all because the Norwegian forward who has found some new confidence levels with maturity as he is even going to feature for Norway in the FIFA World Cup. So considering it's going to be a World Cup year, yes, Guardiola might just not have extreme combination changes and would like to have Haaland in the goal scoring charts as long as he's helping Man City win games.
All right, sure. Well, do stay on with me, Pradyumna, as we go ahead in the discussions. Viewers, the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations has also begun with an emphatic first round, delivering goals, drama and some early statements from several title contenders. Now, across the opening set of group matches, attacking football dominated. Nearly 30 goals were scored with no goalless draws, underlining the intent shown by teams from the outset. Senegal made one of the strongest starts, cruising to a 3-0 win over Botswana. Nicholas Jackson struck twice as Senegal controlled the game, immediately positioning themselves as one of the teams to beat. The Democratic Republic of Congo also opened with a narrow but important win, edging Benin to sit level with Senegal at the top of their group. Egypt, the tournament's most successful side historically, were pushed hard in their opener against Zimbabwe after falling behind. The Pharaohs relied on Mohamed Salah's late winner to secure a 2-1 victory. South Africa also impressed, beating Angola by the same scoreline to record a rare opening day win at AFCON. In Group C, both Tunisia and Nigeria started positively. Tunisia defeated Uganda 3-1 with a disciplined and clinical display, with Nigeria's 2-1 win highlighted their depth and attacking balance, keeping them firmly in the early qualification picture. Now, one of the standout performances came from Algeria also. The Desert Foxes eased past Sudan 3-0 with Riyad Mahrez pulling the strings and scoring twice. Burkina Faso also produced late drama elsewhere, scoring twice in stoppage time to overturn Equatorial Guinea and claim a memorable comeback victory. Early signs suggest a wide open tournament. Traditional heavyweights have started well, but tight score lines and late goals point to a highly competitive group stage. As teams move into the second round matches, qualification scenarios will begin to take shape, and early momentum could prove decisive in the race for the knockout stages. I request Pradyumna to join me back in the discussion here. Pradyumna, what do you make of the African Cup of Nations so far?
Honestly speaking, we can't. This is the most unpredictable AFCON that's ever happened for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And with Morocco just having an absolute blitzkrieg in the opening game, magnificent goals scored in both halves. Also with South Africa showing why they deserve to be in the top 48 qualifying into the FIFA World Cup. All teams which look clear favorites to progress into the knockouts, showing clear statements as to why 6 months down the line they need to be in the top 48 best teams in the world. Yes, some very key performances from individuals, but more than individuals, I'm happy to see that teams are collectively putting in the effort, not just the Arab Cup teams which are coming in fresh into AFCON, but the newer teams finding that identity which was lost in the past decade. They are just reclaiming what was fading down the line. And look, AFCON is back.
Mohamed Salah seems to have put his recent troubles at Liverpool behind him, right? Could this be the season he finally left silverware with his beloved national team?
Well, I pretty much hope so. Mo Salah has been running down the wing and deservedly called the Egyptian king by the Liverpool fans at the COP. So yes, as a fan in general, for a man who has been so consistent with his national team as well as for the club, and given whatever has happened in the recent past, I wouldn't say redemption as such, because he has his title rival Omar Marmoush playing for Man City, who is his national teammate. So yes, the cohesion looks very nice. The composure of the Egyptians at this point of time in the group stage, however, it's only one game played so far, but looks like they're pretty much on course to handle those knockout game pressures in those key situations. Remember, international football is always about fine margins. It's completely different to league where the margins could be calculated and you could plan a long run. Here, one mistake and you're probably shown the exit door. So if Egypt handles those fragile moments in the knockout games, I think they should be very well focused to win the AFCON title.
And talking of the surge of attacking football that we are seeing, in this year's of AFCON, does this augur well for the African talent, making it also to the top level of football?
Precisely. I remember I used to cover games while I was in my medical studies. Earlier in my medical college, I used to watch the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. I used to see these African teams showing pure class and dominance. But somewhere down the line, past the age group tournaments, their relevance fades away when it comes to senior team appearances. And for the first time in so many years, I could see that end-to-end footballing action, end-to-end games with dominating or convincing results. No one-sided score lines like it used to be the case a few years ago. World Cup favorites not being in the dominant figurine side, or underdog stories being scripted, and I'm expecting one underdog story to surface in this year's AFCON for sure. So they are learning their lessons. They are learning that the young talent needs to be cultivated as well. It's not just the age group tournaments that they need to show their talent on. Mind you, Nigeria has been winning the Under-17 FIFA World Cup. In fact, Morocco has players who have played in the various divisions of Spain and France in the past, even Mali for that matter. So just very happy to see that the players who have played in the foreign leagues are showing their true color, true game, true nature of their spirit in their national colors. And here's hoping that African football in general shows the world that they might as well produce one world champion in the next 6 months.
All right, very interesting to hear from you, Pradyumna, but thank you very much for joining me for now in this discussion. And viewers, moving ahead, Travis Head has put Australia firmly in control of the Ashes Test, following up his explosive century in Perth with a more patient, grinding 100 on his home ground at Adelaide Oval. Now, Head finished the day unbeaten on 142 from 196 balls, striking 13 fours and 2 sixes. He survived a crucial dropped chance on 99 before reaching his fourth consecutive century at the venue. Australia closed day 3 on 271 for 4, with Alex Carey unbeaten on 52, extending the hosts' overall lead to 356 runs. England were briefly found hope through Ben Stokes and Jofra Archer, but once again failed to capitalise. With questionable bowling choices and momentum slipping away, England now face a daunting task to keep their Ashes hopes alive. And moving ahead now, viewers, the FIA has effectively cleared Mercedes and Red Bull to proceed with their interpretations of the so-called compression ratio loophole for the 2026 Formula One power unit rules. The decision has sparked intense debate about competitive balance ahead of one of the sport's biggest regulation resets. At the heart of the issue is how the regulations define compression ratio. The rules state that the power unit must have a compression ratio of 16:1 at the time of inspection, which occurs at ambient temperature. Mercedes and Red Bull have identified a grey area that allows the engine to meet this requirement when checked, while operating at a higher compression ratio once the unit is running under race conditions. A higher compression ratio improves the thermal efficiency and power output, potentially offering a significant performance advantage. Reports suggest this could be worth as much as 3 to 4 tenths of a second per lap if optimized, though the exact gains remain unclear and unverified. Crucially, the FIA has ruled that these solutions comply with the written regulations. Mercedes is understood to have been in ongoing dialogue with the governing body throughout development, reinforcing the view that this is an example of engineers exploiting legal grey zones rather than breaking rules. For rival manufacturers, this situation is more complicated. Replicating such a solution would likely require a fundamental redesign of their power units. That makes the 2026 rollout unlikely, with 2027 seen as a more realistic target for those playing catch-up. However, this ruling does not automatically make Mercedes and Red Bull runaway favourites for 2026. Compression ratio is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Pushing it too far risks engine knocking and reliability issues. At the same time, the new regulations place enormous emphasis on electric power deployment and fully sustainable fuels, both of which introduce significant unknowns. With so many variables in this play, the advantage may offer an early edge, but it is far from decisive. The 2026 power unit battle is shaping up to be complex, technical, and fiercely contested, exactly as Formula One intended. And I request Charanjot Singh Kohli, who is senior F1 writer at Sportskeda, to join me in this discussion. He joins us from New Delhi. Thanks very much, Charanjot, for joining me in this discussion. Charanjot, in your opinion, does this FIA clarification create an early competitive imbalance for 2026?
I think we have to wait and watch because I think as you kind of briefed that, okay, fine, there is one area where when it comes to compression ratios where we might see both Mercedes and to a certain extent Red Bull as well pull a certain gap on the competitors. But that's not the only area where we can actually see teams making gains, because first of all, there's a completely new sustainable fuel that's also going to play a role. Then there's an almost 50% of your power is going to be electric. So that's an area where teams like Honda, they have certain advantage because they've been investing in this particular area for a while now, not only in Formula One but in general. Then you have Audi. Audi has been competing in Formula E. So to a certain extent, they have certain expertise on that front. So in essence, does it help? It definitely does. And if the teams are, if you have so many teams that are actually asking for clarifications on this front, it does tell you that, okay, this is one area where they have to be, where probably they missed out, the other three manufacturers. So it could help, but does it mean that as the 2026 testing first begins, we'll have Mercedes and Red Bull powered teams at the front? I think we'll have to wait and watch. It's not going to be as simple.
Do you think the rival teams can realistically close this gap before the new rules debut?
Depends, because there is one area when it comes to, first of all, we have to be very clear about the fact that when we are saying that both Mercedes and Red Bull, they have unlocked, they are operating in that gray zone where the operating compression ratio is more than 16, but when they are being tested, it's around 16. Now, while that is the gray zone for sure, and it should help the overall efficiency and stuff, we have to understand that that is only one part of the game. There are far too many areas, and also we shouldn't forget, in 2009, one of the areas where it was supposed to help teams, it was the double diffuser. Now there were three teams that had the double diffuser. It was Braun GP, it was Toyota, and Williams. It was only Braun that won races and ultimately won the championship. The other teams could not uh, basically use that advantage. So again, when it comes to Formula One, there are too many moving pieces. Maybe it's a bit too early to make judgments.
And finally, what's your take? Is this, would you say, engineering, a smart engineering, or just a proof that regulations were poorly written?
Uh, Formula One is all about loopholes. At the end of the day, when we talk about Formula One, there are always going to be loopholes. It's just that, again, the reason why this has got this much of backlash is because in the last few years, we've had a large influx of new fans. And these fans, they have not really gone through a previous era where we've seen the new power units introduced, different technical regulations. This time around, it's going to be a lot of it. Now, when it's often said, I mean, Adrian Newey, probably one of the greatest car designers in Formula One history, it's often said that when he looks at a regulation, how you read it is what it says and what it doesn't say. One of the best example is this one where the regulation specifically states that the compression ratio should be 16.1 and it's going to be measured at ambient temperature, ambient conditions. Now, once that is said, there is no mention of how there's no mention of whether the compression ratio should be more or less than that in the operating conditions when the car is running. And that's where the teams capitalize. And again, it's kudos to Mercedes, to be honest, because I think one thing that is being missed out is, so Mercedes, Mercedes HPP, the high performance unit, they were the ones that actually identified the loophole. One of the people was hired by Red Bull Powertrains, and that person ultimately ended up getting their information to Red Bull, and that's how both of them ultimately capitalized on it. With that being said, I think it's going to be too early to crown any of the teams to have a head start. Because first of all, there are 4 teams that will have the Mercedes power unit. There will be 2 teams that will have the Red Bull powertrain. If that is the case, that's 6 out of 11 teams. So even then, we still have a lot of things to play for.
Well, certainly. But for now, thanks very much, Aranjot, for joining me in this discussion. It's a pleasure to have you. And viewers, before we wrap up this episode of the World of Sports, let's tell you some badminton news. 2-time Olympic medalist and former world champion PV Sindhu has been elected chair of the BWF Athletes Commission for the 2026 to 2029 term. The appointment marks a significant leadership role for one of badminton's most accomplished players on the global stage. As chair, Sindhu will also serve as a member of the Badminton World Federation Council, giving athletes a direct voice in the sport's international decision-making and governance. Reacting to her election, Sindhu said she was honored by the trust placed in her by fellow athletes and pledged to carry out the responsibility with humility and gratitude. She also acknowledged the contributions of outgoing chair Gracia Polai, crediting her for strong leadership during the previous term. Sindhu's elevation reflects her growing influence beyond the court as she transitions into a role shaping policies that affect players worldwide while continuing to be a leading figure in Indian sport. Let's also now cover some news from tennis. Stanislas Wawrinka has announced he will retire at the end of the 2026 season, closing the chapter on one of tennis's most remarkable careers. The 3-time Grand Slam champion confirmed the decision in a social media post, saying it was time to write the final chapter of his professional journey. Turning pro in 2002, the Swiss star became known as a late bloomer who thrived on the biggest stages. Nicknamed the Stanimal, Wawrinka stunned the tennis world by defeating Rafael Nadal to win the 2014 Australian Open before overcoming Novak Djokovic in the finals for the 2015 French Open and the 2016 US Open. At his peak, Wawrinka reached world number 3, won 16 ATP titles, claimed Olympic doubles gold with Roger Federer in 2008 and helped Switzerland secure its first Davis Cup in 2014. Now ranked outside the top 150 after multiple injuries and surgeries, the 40-year-old says he still wants one final push, promising fans one last tour before saying goodbye to the sport he helped define during tennis's golden era. And that's all for this episode of the World of Sports. Stay tuned for more news updates.
Thank you.